For this video here is gonna be about video game value. What do you guys value at the most, like, in video games, or like could be one value, multiple values, and yeah. So the first one here now is going to be, oh yeah, and please like, share, subscribe. The first one's going to be content size. So the size, like the content. Do you guys value, like, content size, or length of the content, or length of the game, even, right? So how long, like, is the story, or how much, I goes more into, a content, a variety, a side activity, a variety, right? A side quest, a variety, right? And yeah, um, you know, I go in, like, into the story. Do you guys value a great story, like, in games? I know for me, like, over time, like, I see, very rarely do we get great stories in movies, TV shows, right? Games, right? Multiple mediums. Very rarely I do get great stories, but do you value that though? A great stories, like in a game, Red Dead Redemption 2, Witcher 3, for example. Great stories, they can really make the game feel more meaningful. They can give the game more meaning, and it goes into characters, valuing a great characters as well, like in games, the main character, right? In games, right? The more you like a certain character, the more likely you are to play through the game easier, and yeah. Gameplay, a variety, going into gameplay, a variety, right? That's good to have a lot of a variety, like in the gameplay loop, the side activity loops, right? And yeah, so, it goes more into a side activities, a side quest too as well, and other things too, like in the game. Do you like a game that's like, I like games like with a good difficulty balance, but do you like a game that's more challenging, right? That is more challenging for you, like a Souls game or a Ghost Runner, or do you like a game that's where you feel more overpowered? You're more overpowered compared to the enemies, and yeah, But it just depends, like, from person to person, right? The difficulty balance. I don't like games that are too hard, or I don't like games that are too easy. It feels boring. Fast pace versus slow pace. Do you like a game that's more faster pace, or a game that's more slower pace? For example, fast paced game, for example, Ghost Runner, very fast paced game, or Metal Gear Rising, or a Redout, right? Or a Wipeout, like for the PSP. A slower paced game would be like some sort of a decision based game, The Quarry, Until Dawn, or a Detroit That Becomes Human, where it's a lot of slow walking. And yeah, I prefer fast paced. I'm more of a fast paced gamer. Doom, right? Doom Eternal, Ghost Runner, Returnal, and yeah. It goes into action packed. You like games with lots of action in it too as well, like action sequences, great bosses, or a QTE sequences that is implemented well, like with the action. Are things too as well, like graphics, right? Visuals, audio designs, soundtracks. The visuals in a game, right? Certain games look very beautiful. They look very beautiful, very stunning in the character design, sometimes the vehicles, the atmosphere, the scenery, the buildings, the architecture around you, and yeah, But yeah, they have great textures, great resolution, or sometimes, even now, like, where 60 FPS is, everybody wants that now, right? Where the frame rate is smooth and the environment looks very great. Other things too, like audio, like great audio design in games, like Resident Evil 2, for example, remake, where it has great audio design, where the sound, right? So for example, Mr. X's footsteps, I can hear it very well, and it sounds very realistic. Like, it sounds like realistic footsteps. And yeah, a soundtrack too as well. I love, like, when games have great soundtracks. Near Automata, for example, whether it be, it depends on your preference, like, for music, right? It depends. But whether it be like some sort of orchestra, or like classic hip hop, or some sort of heavy metal inspired, a fast paced music, right? In a game, and yeah. But yeah, again, the soundtrack has to complement the game, right? As certain types of games, they're made for certain types of music. Atmosphere, so immersion. So atmosphere and the immersion in the game. Immersion is like how connected, like, you feel to that world, or how realistic the world feels. King Kong 2005, for example, is very realistic in the sense of urgency, and constantly having to check for bullets, right? You're constantly running, like, all the resources, and the environment, everything around you feels very big and massive, right? And yeah, but it's like how realistic does the world around you feel? Red Dead 2, for example, it's a great immersive world, because you really feel like you're living through the Wild West, playing through the game, right? Immersion is very important because it gets you to play the game more and more and more. If you like that medium, or not so much medium, or that a time period, right? Do you value like multiplayer in games, like great multiplayers? I rarely play multiplayer because I'm mostly on PlayStation, and since the PS4 they monetize multiplayer, so you can't play unless you pay for PlayStation Plus, which I think is silly. But multiplayer, whether it be shooters or competitive racers or other types of multiplayer fighting games, and yeah. Do you like do you value a one-on-one fighting game or like a more bigger scale shooter, right? So a bigger scale, like a multiplayer shooter. We all know Call of Duty, we all know Battlefield, Halo, for example, right? And yeah, but yeah, multiplayer, it depends. This depends really like on the person, right? I'm more of a single player type of gamer, right? So another one now is going to be a replayability of the game, the replayability. Replayability depends on how much you are willing to replay the game, but it really depends how much you enjoyed it the first time. Replayability is great for, let's say a decision-based game. Detroit Becomes Human, because you can play the game once and you can replay the game again. So once you play the game once, you go a certain path, you replay it again and you go a different path, then the outcome changes. The characters will go a different route, and yeah. With the Quarry, like I made a video about the Quarry a couple of weeks ago. Same thing there, and yeah. But replayability, like, is like I value it more for like a great open world game, like a great adventure game. Uncharted, for example, Uncharted 1 or Uncharted 3, they have great high replayability. Uncharted 2, for example, Red Dead 2, for example, The Last of Us, for example. So another one was going to be a nostalgia or recent. Do you value more nostalgic games or games like the past? I hear a lot of gamers say games were better back in the day. They had more, you feel they had more soul back then, like in games and the games nowadays. Or do you value more recent games? Are you a person that, you gotta buy every big game, like every big AAA game that comes out? So recency versus a nostalgia. Like I'm on a budget now, so I avoid buying like new games. Unless it's a game I really want to buy, unless it's something I really want to buy. But it just depends, right? With the rising cost of everything, like especially games, like, right? Like I just save up like for the game that I am willing to, right? A Crimson Desert next year or a Metal Gear Solid 3 remake, and yeah. Cutscene heavy games, challenge modes. Oh yeah, cutscene heavy games. You like cutscene heavy games, right? For me it depends. But if you're gonna have a cutscene heavy game, you better have like a dialogue heavy. You better have other things to make up for it, like a great gameplay and to make up for it. Cutscene heavy games will include like a lot of slow walking areas, right? And yeah, but usually cutscene heavy games, they come with a dialogue choice and a dialogue options, or LA Noire, for example, there's lots of cutscenes and a dialogue where you have to, through evidence, you can, decide whether this person is lying, and you're trying to solve a case. And yeah, but it has a lot of cutscenes in it. A scale of the game. Another one was a scale of the game, the epicness of the game. That's a big one too as well. If the game is done right, God of War 3 has a big scale. It is big scale, big enemies. At the end of an era, the end of this Greek Olympic era, right? Olympus era, sorry. And yeah, it's very big scale, massive scale, right? Or like you have, another one now is going to be, a Metal Gear Rising. At times it feels very big scale, right? A scale that could just be in terms of the environment, the size of the environment around you. Uncharted 4, for example, right? When you go into certain areas, new areas, uncharted territories, you can really see the size of the environments and the architectures, the buildings, and yeah. Another one now is going to be like, do you like a more linear style of game or a game that's more, open world, or you can go at various paths? It depends. This really depends, right? It just falls down like on what the game is going for and what you prefer. Linear style games, like more adventure, right, where there's a certain pathway and you have to stick to that pathway. The game is meant to be played like in like that order, right? And yeah, Other things too for as well, like end game content, side content, right? So once you finish the main story and you go into the, what else is there to do? Some games just have the main story, will have a good, main story or like a main campaign, but there's not much else to do. End game content could be as well multiplayer. So again, I'm going back to multiplayer, but end game content is more like when I think about it, it's more like an arcade more like mode, like a challenge mode. Wolverine Origins, for example, had it had that, what was it, a 12-hour long campaign, right? Very fun campaign playing as Wolverine, but Wolverine Origins only had the challenge mode where you had to fight, where you basically fight different versions of yourself, and yeah, but there wasn't really anything else outside of that. So it goes into DLCs, which is my last point. DLCs, you value DLC content, right? Sometimes DLC content will be like a separate game. If I enjoy a game, like I really want to see more of that game. I want to see more of that world, more of the characters, or more like a DLC spin-off, or like some sort of DLC challenge mode. And yeah, there's also obviously as well multiplayer DLCs, arcade DLCs, Call of Duty Zombies DLC, right? Black Ops back in the day, right? Where I believe every DLC gave you multiple multiplayer maps and one zombie map, right? And yeah. So yeah, so video game value, lots of things like to value like in a game, digital versus physical. I know we're moving into a more digital age of games, so digital or physical, do you value like physical or digital? I love physical. I've been collecting games since I was like 10 years old, right? But yeah, like I try and I collect games that I know I'm going to play. Digital, some games are only digital. Alan Wake 2, I believe, for example, where it's only digital. Hellsinger, what was it again? Mel Hellsinger, for example, right? And yeah, but yeah, I'm moving into a more, I hate this, I hate that they're getting rid of physical medium, right? I guess because the manufacturing like of disc and game cases, it probably cost them more money, but still, no, like I'm old school. I like the case, the disc more, and yeah. Spaces, how much space does a game take up? Games are taking up more and more space now. The bigger, because of the technological advancements over time, they're taking up more space. Therefore, your console is gonna run out of space quicker. And yeah, versus back in the day, games didn't take up a lot of space. So yeah, video game value. Please like, share, subscribe. Right? I'll share the video all over. Let me know down below what do you value, right?